So let's go ahead and get a floor in here, and then we'll get our hands so that we can actually see them. Let's put that cube at 0, 0, 0. Make it 30 by 30. And then let's just throw in, I don't know, capsule or something to look at, right? So it's not quite so boring looking. And after fiddling for hours with the lighting, thinking it was something I was doing, I could never figure out what I was missing. And it turns out in the HDRP, if you go back to the demo scene, they have this post-process volume. So if you just copy that, go back to your scene and paste, ta-da, the lighting is fixed. And before, the directional light didn't matter what I did with it. I couldn't get it to look right. So now it looks good. It's actually a little too bright. But now we can actually mess with our intensity here. Maybe too many. I don't know. Something like that. Okay. And now to be able to see our hands in the scene, under XR Rig, we have our camera offset. Inside of that, there's the left-hand controller and the right-hand controller. I'm going to put a cylinder inside of here for a very primitive looking hand. Call this cylinder left hand. I'm going to zero out the location. Rotation, you're going to want at 90. And I found a good scale was 0.05. And child that underneath this left hand. And then I'm just going to Control D to duplicate, put that as the child of, you got it, right hand. Zero out that. In there. So now we have a left hand and a right hand. Oop, that zero out. There we go. Now they're zeroed out. Now let's test it and see if I can see my hands. Loading in the Quest. Hey, I can actually see my hands, and they're tracking pretty good. Great. All right, now I'm also going to make my XR rig. I'm going to make myself a little taller, so I'm just going to put that at a 2. You can make yourself any height you want, but 2 seems to work pretty good. And now I'm going to make a little table so I can put the objects on that I'm going to be grabbing. Game object, cube, and sometimes what I like to do is just go into play mode and do the resizing then. And when you're in play mode, copy the component values, and then when you come back out, which is what I just did, you can then paste the component values. So I resized it to about just make it an even 3 by 3 by 0.5, and that XYZ. So now this stuff is right in front of me, and I'm actually viewing it from this side, I guess. And now we can start putting some things on there that we can pick up and grab. I am going to make some materials so things look a little different. So let's make a folder for materials, and I'm just going to create on here a couple of quick materials like yellow. I'm colorblind, but I think yellow's somewhere in that range. Ugh. Yeah, they're all kind of ugly. There we go. Let's throw that onto the floor. Let's create another one for my table. Make that kind of a nice, let's make it a darker blue. Blue would be away from red, right? It's always fun picking colors with your students because I don't know what they are. Okay. Looks good. By the way, after fiddling around a little bit, I put the XR rig back at 1 for the Y, so the bottom was flat against that floor cube, which I might as well name floor. But the camera offset is actually what I probably should have been adjusting. So the camera is actually up in the air a little bit. 0.75 or something seemed about right. And then when I hit play, I actually back away from my desk a little bit so that I'm not right at the table already. So let's test that out. Great. Now I'll be able to pick up stuff. So the way this works is for us to pick up things under your XR rig, the left and right hand controller. Let me collapse these things. By default, it starts with the XR ray interactor, which means you'll be able to pick things up from a mile away using that laser beam. And that's on both of them. So I'm going to take it off of my left one so I can just have it on the right. So the right will be a ray. The left, I want to have to use my hands. So if I do add component and type in interactor, there's the direct interactor, which is basically means your hand. So now my left is the direct and the right is the ray. Now, to have something to pick up the interactable, I'm just going to make a capsule right here, which is huge. And let's go 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. And we'll move it roughly within the area. And I like using hold the V key for the vertex snapping. Snap it. It likes to go to the corners. I don't know why. And let's put it right here in kind of in view here. And then we want this to be interactable. So if I type there is the grab interactable, put that on there. So it has a rigid body, so it's going to want to fall down. And it really needs two colliders. One so that it hits the table and doesn't go through the table, which by the way, that should be named table. In this capsule, the collider will keep it from going through the table, but I need a zone where it will allow my hand to pick it up. And so I'm going to add another capsule collider, except this one's going to have the trigger set to true. And that is the zone where I can pick it up. So you could make this much larger, or so it looks like you're using the force to pick it up or something. But I'm just going to leave it at the defaults for now. But if I make this bigger, I'll be able to pick it up from anywhere inside of that trigger collider. But I'm just going to leave it by default right there. And let's name this Grabbable Capsule. And one other thing I forgot is under the XR rig camera offset, the left hand controller, it needs to know basically how big your hand is. And so we need to add a trigger collider on there. So sphere collider, make it a trigger, and that is a very large hand. Let's go something like that for now. I don't know. Now let's test it out. Controllers here. And if I go here and trigger, sure enough, I can grab it. And you can see I can grab it from a little further away. That's because of the radius of that sphere collider. That's a trigger. And the ray with the trigger on my Quest controller also I can pick up. So I can use ray and steal it, or trigger and steal it. So far so good.